All right, welcome back, everyone. Hope you're doing well. So yeah, welcome back, Tiago. Yeah, we're just gonna have another conversation. As Tiago mentioned, I look a little bit tired. I'm in a different time zone for this one, so and there's just other stuff going on. But so hopefully this will be a little bit more of an organic conversation. But definitely happy to be here for sure. So yeah, welcome back.
Yeah, thank you, man. Thanks for having me again. Last conversation was pretty good.
Yeah.
As I was saying, like I think it ended too abruptly. Like I didn't even notice time pass. I was like, what the hell? 1 hour already? So yeah, just looking forward to it.
Nice. All right, cool. So I think let's actually start by excuse me, maybe closing the loop on the previous conversation because, like you said, it was cut a bit short. Um, about consciousness, right? I think you there were some unfinished thoughts there that you had, and so I'm just gonna let you take the lead on that, and then I'll ask some questions on that. But yeah, I'd love to hear anything else you have to say on the topic, what your views on it are, and stuff like that.
Yeah. So again, I think I summed it up because we had a talk and we went through a lot of different topics, and but then at the end I kind of told you what sort of my key takeaway from the conversation would be, but I don't feel like I elaborated a lot on that key takeaway. I feel like I mentioned consciousness, right? And I mentioned consciousness as this sort of so this fundamental basis by which I'm building this model of mine, right? It's just me working on it at the moment, so I can say that, right? And although I'm inspired by a lot of people in the community, and not only those people, um, and yeah, I think that is the basis by which we should start looking at these functions. So to establish a very fundamental distinction, I think that you mentioned, and I never thought of that term before, but you mentioned that my view on consciousness is the self-evident argument of consciousness. So you said those words, and I was like, oh, I never heard those words before. So I went to research what that meant, and yes, it's totally that. It's this idea of like you can just verify consciousness just because of the fact that you are aware and conscious, right? And I wanted to sort of draw a line to be more clear of what I exactly mean by consciousness. But for me to draw that line, I need to explain the next idea, the thing that sort of operates on consciousness. And I think that's what I call, and I think I didn't get into a lot of this in the previous video, which was conscious representations. This is picked up from Benjamin's bicognition document that he works on with his team. I don't know if you're aware of this
Yeah,
project.
I've seen it.
So yeah, I don't understand half of what's going on there. Just to be clear, nothing against Benjamin. I just
No,
can't make sense
yeah,
out of a
half.
lot
I
of it.
mean, if you have half, that's more than me because I'm like,
No, no, no.
yeah,
Like I don't understand like 70 to 80%,
yeah.
but I do think that it's a great intensive way to try to formalize the theory, and it's a great step in that direction.
Mhm.
Independently of me understanding it or not, there's people like that really are into this stuff, and we should have, as I mentioned previously, we should have the information part also developed, not just the applicational part.
Mhm, mhm.
And I think it's a great step in our. But personally, like I'm frustrated in the sense of like, okay, can you use that to type? And I can't do that with that. So I'm like, okay, you know.
Right.
But back to the point, like I read through it, there were some key ideas. That's actually some terminology that they use. That's great. Some key ideas that they use. That's great. Sorry, are you hearing these sirens? Are you,
On your side, no.
no? Okay, so okay, because there's a sirens, and I was checking if just my mic was muting them. Sorry.
Cool.
And and so I picked up some stuff from there. I can't tell you now exactly what, but I think the term representations I got from there. Okay, from there and from Donald Hoffman both. And so, what are conscious representations? Conscious representations, as much as I define it, are all of the things that happen in consciousness. So I explained it as in the past video as like all of the cognitive functions, right? Feeling, thinking, sensory, intuition, but also OE, OI, DE, DI, in all its forms, be it masculine, feminine, and all the other functions if you want to compute them. To me, representations are all of the events that happen in your conscious experience. You can talk a lot around this. We can say, okay, but it does seem to be the case that there are certain experiences that arise on our conscious experience that weren't a result of our will. But that's another conversation to have, because in my view, for you to even think of this idea that there is an external world and other people that influence your conscious experience. Give the example of Mike Tyson coming into my room and punching me in the face, right? I can't control that. It was just pure chaos. I had no idea that was going to happen, right? And it's very obvious to us that, okay, there are things that are in my control and there are things that are not in my control. And the
Right.
things that are not in my control seem to enter my experience, which is somewhat in my control, right? And so there seems to be this interplay. And I'm not denying that, at least as a representation. I'm not denying that at the representational level. What I deny is that at the foundational level. Consciousness is the foundation, okay? It's the fact that you are aware. And the reason why I say this is because you can only um, uh, um, acknowledge that there is an unconscious, objective world outside of you that influences the subjective internal world. You can only acknowledge that if you are conscious. So and it's only by measuring its after effects. So
Right.
let's give off a simple example. Let's say I fall asleep, right? And as I'm sleeping through the night, I don't know, a neighbor falls. I was asleep. I didn't even witness the event. I will only acknowledge that that event objectively happened in objective reality outside of my conscious experience when I wake up the next day and actually perceive all the information that I'm going to perceive that pertains to that event that happened in the past. Do you see what I'm getting there?
Yeah.
If you can only acknowledge the unconscious because you are conscious and not the other way around.
Yeah.
So that's how I see it at the moment, and that's why I think it's so foundational. Because everything that you acknowledge. So, for example, this goes at the level of our conception of time. To
Mhm.
me, for example, to think of it's very obvious to everyone that thinking of the future is intuition, right? It's just imagining stuff. We can never be sure of what the future is going to be like. We can never be sure what's going to happen the next 5 seconds. We can be reasonably sure, but that's only based on past experience. So if there was an event that had nothing to do with our past experiences and it was going to happen 5 seconds from now, we would have no way to predict it. So this is commonly accepted in people, like the future is sort of an intuitive, abstract kind of thing. What people struggle with the most is acknowledging this in the past. The past is sort of seen more as even though you can have multiple interpretations over the same event, like multiple people looking at the same statue gives different sensor
Right.
past, right? It's still more solid in the sense that we take it as, okay, but there was an objective event that happened in reality in the past, sort of the timeline, right?
Right.
But my argument is, okay, that's good at the representational level, but it's not good at the foundational level because you need to be thinking of the past for you to acknowledge that there is a past in the first place. So in my view, I'm one of those people that believes that there is only an eternal present. When you think of the future, you're only thinking of it in the now. When you think of the past, when you have a memory, when a memory comes to you, even if it's an involuntary memory, it's coming to you now. It never happens in the past. All ideas and conceptions, all memories, all certainties that you have of information that has happened or will happen, the moment that you experience them is always here. And you are living. And I got this from, I am very much inspired by, as I was learning about objective personality, parallel to that, I listened to a lot of Alan Watts. So
Yeah.
Alan Watts, the stuff that he talks about is a big reference for me, man. Like
Yeah.
I got some concepts that are just in my intuition,
I
that
was
I got.
wondering about that because I was going to bring that up in terms of the spirituality side because that's a very common. Yeah.
Right. He mentions this idea of the eternal now, which again is just inspired on Eastern philosophy and religion and all of that, which is interesting because I think it still applies to science. So spirituality, DNF, and DNT working together, right? I find that interesting. But all this to say, back to the point, it's like I think that it's all an eternal now,
Hmm.
and that is a result of consciousness. Now, okay, I believe that for me to be having this conversation with you, I would have to pick my Google Calendar. We would have to talk on Messenger, right, and schedule this event that's supposedly going to happen in the future, and that's why we're having that conversation in the first place.
Hmm.
But that I argue that that only happens at the representational level,
Yeah.
because the reason because what I'm trying to say here is that, okay, but I thought of the future, I thought of time as a as an objective construct, past, present, and future. I believe that that exists outside of me, right? Even though when I'm not experiencing it. And because of that belief, I was able to inform my actions. In this case, me scheduling this talk with you, I was
Yeah.
able to inform my actions and then get a positive output out of that. Right? I got a positive output because now I got the thing that I was thinking of back when we were scheduling it. So, but in my view, this is all internal. You have internal representations of there's a future that's going to happen. That's just something that lives in your mind. You don't really know what's objectively happening in reality because of the matrix, right? And but I guided my actions based on that, and it eventually led to a next set of experiences some days after that were close enough to the thing that I was thinking was going to happen. And so, and but those all of those experiences were internal and were happening inside of my skull. Were all representations that my brain generated and created for it.
Yeah.
You know, the fact that you can never be sure of what actually happened outside of all these experiences remains there. Okay, so what I'm arguing for is that human beings, their belief of what is real, of what is objective, right,
Yeah.
is purely based on subjective experience. And when you say that something really happens, for example, we say that time is a constituent of the real universe that's outside of us, independently of us noticing or not. When we say those things, it's because we are noticing patterns in our own subjective experiences. We were able to inform our actions to get results that gave us positive feedback that allowed us to predict what's going to happen next. And
Yeah.
since that is validating um, uh, all of those eternal experiences, I take the next step of assuming that that is real. But I never experienced what actually was really happening. I only experienced my internal subjective experiences. Do you see? And so these are all just beliefs: belief of time, belief of space, belief of matter, belief of, for
Yeah.
example, there being other conscious people that are conscious beyond me, right? Those are all beliefs that I based on my subjective experience.
Right. Right. Right.
So I don't know if you want to add to that. You're kind of
I was rubbing my head because it's like there's just like as you were talking, is like I was like trying to remember all the stuff that I wanted to say.
that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. I'll keep going if
I
you want.
think that so it sounds like you're approaching this from a very, I'm going to use a very big college word here,
Yeah,
a
that's fine.
very epistemological point of view, right? It's like this problem of knowledge, right? Like the problem of truth, right? Like where is the source of truth, right? And so, and what I was thinking about in relation to that is Jordan. So I don't know if you've read Maps of Meaning or watched his
No,
lectures on
but I've
Maps of Meaning.
watched some of his lectures, just some, just but yeah,
So
I'm aware of it.
no problem. You don't need to know that. I'm just saying that's the reference point. So I think this is completely true, and I think it's very relevant to what you're talking about, where he talks about this problem of trying to understand the world objectively is a very new phenomenon, like probably post enlightenment, post enlightenment probably. And prior to that, um, how humans and how like you know Peterson's an evolutionary psychologist in some sense, how humans, how animals more generally perceive and act in the world is they view the world as a form for action, right? Whereas you mentioned, there are all these representations, right? That now we call objective, like a table, time, space, things like that. But prior, it's like these things were just emotionally affective and like representations on whether it would help us or harm us in pursuit of goals, right? So let's say you, for example, let's use the same example of like trying to schedule a meeting, right? It's like as a form for action, it's like yes, it's like you have time, space, and stuff like that, but it's like ultimately, it's like those. It's not like we care that they're real. It's like we care that they're
They're
useful.
useful.
Exactly.
Exactly. See how we match perfectly?
Yeah.
We said the word at the same time. Yes, yes, yes. I don't know if I mentioned that word previously, but yes, all representations are. So I believe. Sorry, I don't know exactly what epistemological it means here. So my lack of literature and being read on this stuff,
Yeah.
I don't. But yeah, I'm agreeing with you. But we base what is real and objective based on what is useful.
Yeah.
But useful has nothing to do with
With real.
real.
Exactly. Yeah. There's this huge, like, hopefully this is germane or relevant. There's this huge debate. I mean, like, if you've heard it, like Jordan Peterson between Sam Harris, one of their first, not even debates like online. It was like a podcast episode on Sam Harris's Waking Up, I think. And like this was the whole conversation, right? It's like you have objective truth on one side of Sam Harris, and then you have, I think Peterson called it like evolutionary truth or like narrative truth or something like that. I forgot what word he used. Like it wasn't subjective per se, although I mean ultimately it is, but it's more like it's like the truths about how to live and how to operate so that you don't basically you don't die, basically. And so
Yeah,
that's
truth is not. So tell me if I'm reading you correctly. Truth is not what is real as much as we would colloquially talk about it. Truth is what allows you to evolve and just keep on the
Correct.
genes going and flowing.
Correct.
Right? That so we talked about Donald Hoffman. Donald Hoffman has a high agreement with that. The fitness beats truth theorem.
Yeah,
It's exactly that.
exactly.
So to connect like all of the people that we have been talking about. Yes, fitness beats truth, and because Donald Hoffman's argument to clarify that a little bit for people who don't know is practically that. So it's this idea that okay, I don't remember if I mentioned this in our last talk. The example of a lion in the middle of a forest.
No.
Do you remember any of that? I don't remember, so I might be repeating myself here.
You did not bring that up.
Okay, so I think in the book, the case against reality, I forgot the title, I had to look at it. He mentions that, for example, let's say you have a human being, right? 2,000, 3,000, 5,000 years ago. He's in the middle of a forest. If you so this is to challenge the idea of what's real, right? That human beings don't really see what's real, and we're not really concerned with that. So he's in the middle of the forest, and he hears a sound whistling in the middle of the leaves.
Yeah.
A human. This is just a rough example, but if he's concerned with what is real, right? If his perceptions are concerned with what's really happening, the next set of actions that human would take would be about acquiring and constructing information. So what would those actions be? He would be looking more at the bush, trying to see. Maybe he previously had noticed that there was a shade of orange in the middle of the bush, and now he's looking at the bush, the leaves. He sees a bit of orange. I'm not sure. Let me check more. Let me get more. Let me get more on the details. Let me measure reality more, right? And as he's doing all of this, he's already eaten by the tiger that was hiding behind the bush. See, I said orange because I was referring to a tiger. Okay, so this is just an example that I invented. Actually, I don't remember if I invented it or not. I think he mentions this somewhere. If it's not in the book, if it's one of his talks, I'm not sure if I'm making this up or if he actually said it. So don't quote me on this. But it was he gave examples in this kind of idea, which is that if you spend too much time trying to see reality as it is, right, you're stuck on the informational part, and you get eaten, so you don't spread your genes. And you, me, everyone that's watching this video right now is the byproduct of not that, of something else. It has to be something else. What? Well, the human being that just immediately when he heard the bush and saw a shade of orange, right? Bam, ran away, didn't even bother to check. Bye, That was the one that went back to the village and reproduced. So maybe the shade of orange was just an actual orange. He wasn't able to tell, right? His perceptions weren't able to assert what was really happening. He guided his action based on a bunch of unknown information, but that was the one who survived. Yeah. Okay? And we are the product, for not just humans, all the species, of these hacks, right? So, for example, Jordan Peterson in one of his talks, I remember very distinctly, and I tested this myself, and he's really right on this. So if you get a paper, right, and you put a picture of a snake with with withered fangs right out, your peripheral vision is animalistically programmed to immediately notice that. So if you pick the picture of a snake and you put it right on the corner of your peripheral vision, you can't not notice it, right? Because he talks about how we were used to be chimps and hit on trees, but then there was snakes that were trying to attack us. I think that was the censor. And so we evolved to, even from the corner of our eyes, if we notice that pattern of like the fangs, right, the snake there, that grabs immediately our attention. So it's a hack, you see, because why would we prefer to put our attention there, right? No, it's just a program. It's a mechanism that's there because there were a bunch of chimps that didn't have it and got eaten, and there were others that, due to randomness in how the DNA changes in each generation, got that ability, right, survived out of a large group of people, right, and then reproduced, and you keep that going and going and going and going. So yeah, I was complimenting what you were saying. I don't remember where we were going with this.
Basically, fitness beats truth. That core idea.
Oh, right. Yes.
Yeah. So I think this is actually a natural segue to another topic, because I think I'll just kind of share, part of the reason this argument is so interesting, and part of the reason why Jordan Peterson and Sam Harris argued about it. Like, I think they argued about it like 5 times.
I gotta watch that. I gotta watch that. It was a podcast. Crazy.
Waking Up podcast with Sam Harris. It's like, this happened like years ago.
Yeah, so I remember seeing that on YouTube, that they had a beef or something, right? That was what I heard.
Kind of, yeah. Like, but at the core of it, like, it started with this conversation. It started with this conversation. It's like, is there an objective truth, or is there like fitness truths? Let's call it that. And by implication, so Jordan Peterson makes this association of, it's like, okay, the reason why he's even interested in this is because it's like, most of human history, we've all been religious in some way.
Right. He's got his whole thing with Christianity going on, right? That's why he's motivated to.
Yeah. Not exclusively Christianity, but
not exclusively. Yes. West, he also got into a lot of Russian stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. But I think so for Jordan, he's like, well, okay, what makes you think? So the core is like, what makes you think that religions like Christianity are talking about objective truth in the same way that scientists talk about it, right? What makes you think that these are not fundamentally representations, in your words, of like deep fitness payoffs that have survived? I think Christianity has been around for like 1,000 years at least. Survived at least 1,000 years.
I see what you mean. Yes, now that you mention it, I did pick up on that as I was watching his lectures. I never thought of it in the way that you're saying it right now, but yes, he does make an argument from that, even in his lectures about. So what I got that not from religion directly, but from his videos on Disney stuff, because he makes the same argument, but also in in stories.
Yeah, exactly.
Why do we so appealed to stories? He also talks a lot about that, right? Why are we so appealed to Pinocchio? Why are we so appealed to all those NF stories, right? Because they are fundamental teachings that might go beyond what we can ST prove. That's why it's so NF. But it's like a compressing, right, of information that we can utilize. That's generational, and so that's why these tales, these SI tales, have persisted for so long. And you can say that for stories that mothers tell their kids, but you can also say that for religion. I think it kind of applies to both there.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, in fact, it's like Peterson basically, it's like, I don't want to say he reduces, but he definitely frames religions as fundamentally narratives, right? Like, that is fundamentally what they are.
Right. Yes, that makes sense. And like the hero's journey, for example, that's a narrative that goes a lot in those stories, for example. Yes.
So I think the segue that I wanted to bring you to is one of the things that we've talked about offline is your approach to God, right? And especially with this kind of consciousness view and stuff like that. So given all this, and especially given this context of evolutionary fitness truths, it's like, I'm curious as to how you approach this.
Well, it's a derivation from all of this. again, disclaimer. I respect everyone's beliefs. I'm not here again to say anything about religion. I know this can be a serious topic for some people, and I do not want to give people any margin to think that I'm trying to disrespect religion. Religion is a thing. So what you're getting right now is my view of it. And what is my view? My view is me trying to think or bunker the shit out of it. Trying to see if it makes sense to me. If it does make sense to me, then I'll accept Christianity. If it doesn't, if uh, um, Hinduism, Buddhism, or Middle Eastern religions, or whatever religions you think of, African, whatever, if it makes sense, right, then I'll accept it because it made sense. But I've been trying to give myself reasons to accept it, and I've just failed miserably at doing it. And the reason why that is, and I just gave you the basis of it, with all this consciousness talk and the fitness beats truth talk. I've just given you the basis for it. We again, maybe I should explain it a little bit more,
Yeah.
Because it's not going to sound as clear if I just say the short answer. Give me a second. Let me think of. Okay, I'm making this example up. Sorry if this is not as clear as it should be. Think of it this way. Okay. Here we go. Okay, examples. Not a real example, but a metaphorical. Okay, let's suppose you have two people. Okay, and these two people were walking down the street, right? And so person A, person B. You are not either A or B. You are just observing this whole event, and you're seeing this happen. So you have person A and person B. And person A says they both observe the same event. Let's say this in the same time. They're both walking down the street at the same time. And person A says, a car passed by the road, that's the first statement, and a lady fell. A lady was walking on the street and she fell. So those are two statements. There are two statements, right? A car passed by the road, a lady fell. Mm-hmm. Person B says, a car passed by the road and the lady didn't fall. So now you never observed this event, right? I said you were, but let's forget that. You weren't observing this event. You go speak with person A and person B. And you try to investigate what really happened at that time. And so you find yourself with a set of options in what you could believe in, right? Because there's a lot of different ways that you can approach this. Mm-hmm. You have so both of those people's statements have parts of it that are coherent, and there are parts of it that are not coherent. In fact, they're opposites, right? I'm giving you a very simple example. Yeah. The part that is coherent is you have two cars. You have a car that passes by the road. Both people agreed on that. They said the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. And the person, but both of them also said opposite things about the lady. So let's suppose now that you are in a critical situation, okay? Critical, like your life depended on a decision that you were going to use this information on. Let's not clarify that just for the sake of hurrying up the argument. So I'm keeping this a bit vague, I know. So what would you take as truth out of that? Mm-hmm. And so the answer, at least the beginning of the answer, the start of the answer is really simple. Well, you know for a fact that they were coherent on the car passing by the road. So I'll just take that as a given. That was real. That was true. That was truth, right? But since I didn't know these people, I have no more trust over A than B or B over A. I cannot say absolutely anything about the lady. Right. I can say that the lady was there, right? Okay, sure. But whether or not she fell or not, I can't, there's no pattern, no similarity here, no coherence between the statements that would allow me to build that as truth.
Right. I think I see where you're going with this.
So what I'm arguing for here, this is the short term, is truth is only based on things that are coherent. Okay? Right. We cannot make a solid. I'm not saying that those things didn't happen, right? But we cannot find truth out of incoherency. Truth is coherency. It necessarily has to be. Truth goes in the direction of coherency. Okay? That's what truth is, at least as much as I'm sort of defining it right now. Mm-hmm. And so I started with religion. Let me think of why I gave you this example.
I would say, so here's my argument of why you're bringing this up, is that my thought is that, okay, religions have incoherent views on what God is.
Exactly. Sorry, I just had to think of it a little bit because I got too clung up on the explanation and
Yeah.
lost my train of thought here. But yes, that was exactly it. That was exactly it. So when you have different views, right? Jesus existed. I don't know a lot about religion. Sorry, I don't mean to sound disrespectful.
No, that's fine.
Allah existed.
Yeah, Buddha,
Buddha,
Muhammad.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. These people existed and did the things that it's prophesied that they did, right?
Yeah.
I am not denying what you are saying, but that's as much real to me as you telling me that a tree fell and I didn't watch that tree fall. There
Right.
is absolutely no difference between those two statements. You tell me, oh, but there's churches and there's communion and there's rituals and no, that has nothing to do with the original argument. You see, that's a fallacy. If you research fallacies, there's a name for that. There's an actual name for a fallacy that's that. It's the using the argument that churches prove that it happened.
Bandwagon
No, people can
fallacy.
collectively believe on things that didn't happen. Sorry.
Yeah. I said the bandwagon fallacy, maybe.
Yeah, I'm not really into fallacy. I remember the intuition. I don't remember the sense. So it's
Okay.
probably that. The bandwagon makes a lot of sense. So yeah, it should be that. It should be that. For sure. Yeah. The idea that it started somewhere, but now people are keeping on with rituals without even knowing what started it in the first place, right? And yes, I see religion as a result of that. And so that's why, in the same way that on your day-to-day life, you wouldn't just accept things that people tell you without at least trying to check them, right? Verify them in the sense or prove them to some level.
Yeah.
I think religion. Why I don't know why people. I never understood why people were so easy on religion specifically. Why is it that they're so
Well,
critical with most of their lives, but religion has to be this place where they just take
no,
everything as a given? You know.
okay, so but let's go back to. So I'm going to push back here a little bit. I think
That's
let's
fine.
go
That's fine.
back, because again, remember the argument that I'm bringing up is, the way that I'm framing this is that
It's
religion
useful.
is truths, yeah, useful truths. So to go back to the example of the lion, you don't want them to be too critical, right? It is a jump.
Right. I see what you mean. I'm computing what you're telling me. You're saying that it's an inconsistency. What I'm saying now and what I said previously. Let me work that out for a second. So okay, sure, but I still don't think that you should. Evolution has brought us to this space, this situation, where we do things as we act just based on these programs, and those are more on the side of like you just do them for the sake of doing them. You're not really concerned with the information. But now, in the state that we are, I don't think that that is the correct approach. I think that the correct approach, in terms of what you're going to represent in your mind, is based on consistency, right? So, okay, your system is made to accept certain things that you the immediate reaction to the snake is just an immediate action that you take without really thinking because you're just programmed to do that. But now that you are a sort of more intelligent species, I think that the approach shouldn't be that. I think the approach should be science. Science says, because what is science? Science. So I have my own consciousness sort of view on science. Science is not what is objectively true.
Yeah.
The first thing that science acknowledges, and if you think about it, this is why there is the scientific method, right? The reason behind the scientific method is that people can all collectively have their own subjective truths, right? But if we're going to live as a society, we must be able to find some sort of agreement between our individual subjective truths. Right. Maybe this is a TI kind of way to see it in your T, and you're kind of seeing the faults. But whatever. I'll just keep going.
No, keep going.
Each person is just trying to establish their own subjective truths, but in order for us to evolve, in order for us to work as a society, to function as a society, in order to know what we're going to do next collectively, right? We need some level of agreement. And so the level of agreement is, okay, let's just both act based on these rules that we talk with each other out. So maybe I'm talking with you, you're talking with me. Let's just both act based on these rules, see what results we obtain, compare our results. And if as much as I can see that I'm agreeing with you, and as much as you see that as much as I see that you're agreeing with me, and as much that you see that I'm agreeing with you, as much we convince each other that we're agreeing with each other, still subjective, you're still living in your mind, still in my mind, as much as I believe that you agree with me, then we take that to the next level. We say, okay, this isn't 100% subjective, it's 99% subjective, and there's now 1% of objectiveness. Still a belief. That's still a subjective belief, but it's information of a higher quality,
Right,
right?
because it's shared.
It's shared. We believe that it was shared. It's not shared. We believe that it was shared. There's a very big difference there, right? And
Okay.
so that's the scientific method. And by definition, the scientific method. So that's the gun that I'm going to use to sort of sort out this apparent inconsistency in my two arguments here.
Mm-hmm.
The scientific method just has not been able to prove these claims that these people, even if they existed, if they had those powers, if it went exactly in that narrative, if there, for example, beliefs over if God existed or doesn't exist, science has not been able to prove over that. And so it is as much real. So I'm using science here as the argument. God is as much real as the tree that fell and I didn't hear it, because if there's no way to falsify it, scientific method, there's no way to falsify it, there's no way to do an experiment or a measurement of some sort that would either deny or prove it, right? And that is
Yeah.
consistent among people independently of their beliefs, right?
Mm.
Then it's just I think a lot over. So you remember Ricky Gervais, the class that we did
Oh yeah.
somewhat recently. Did you watch that interview, the Unbelievers interview in black and white, where he talks about his views on religion? I don't know if you watched that. If you didn't
I
watch that,
I I don't remember
vaguely.
visually. I remember him talking about along very similar lines. I don't know if it's the same interview, but I remember him talking about like, yeah, it's like if we can measure God, I'd be the first one to believe.
Exactly. That's what exactly what I was gonna say. You read my mind. If you can measure God, it would be. I'm just quoting him. If you could measure God, it would be the greatest scientific experiment. So you see, back to the start of the conversation, right? My views on God. There's your short answer. If we can measure it, if there is a scientific method, a method that's based on the scientific method, right? To prove that, right? It would be the greatest experiment ever. Like I would believe it, but there isn't. And so it is as valid as you telling me stuff that's unprovable or unfalsifiable.
Yeah.
And so I can't. This is a me thing still, right? There are people that believe and don't need this kind of overthinking it, but
Yeah.
I don't allow myself to believe in those things because of this reason. You
So
know?
yeah, did I interrupt you? My bad.
Sorry.
Did I interrupt you?
No, no, not at all. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. So I think how would I word it? Well, I mean, there's two things. I think the first thing is that like by definition, at least according
Sorry, I
to
just think of something that I failed to mention. Can
oh
I
go
fin-
ahead.
can I
Yeah, go
interrupt you and finish up?
yeah.
Sorry, this is important because I don't think I quite answered your argument without this. So these beliefs that Jordan Peterson talks about, they still can be useful, right?
Right. That's
And that's maybe that's what you were going to talk about, right? I still haven't quite nailed my mark there. What I mean by that is, yes, to believe in a God and take it as a given. This is something that even Dave and Shen have talked about in the classes. You take God as a given. Don't really overthink it. Just believe in Christian values, and your life can be really good. Like your life can be amazing just because you're acting based on these values. You didn't bother to scientifically check if they're statistically working, not working, if it's if not getting too much on it. Just believe them, right? And then act on those principles and care and love for other people. Love the next person as much. What did Jesus say about loving your neighbor or something, right?
yeah.
I'm not really into that, right?
Yeah.
But stuff like that. That's really. I'm not arguing for the validity and the usefulness of that. I'm arguing for truth. Truth is what is consistent in your experiments. And if you say that's something, so there's two arguments to be made here. One is the argument of religion being useful, and one is the argument of it being real. I believe that it can be useful, so I don't disagree with you on that end, because to me, it's the evolutionary truth. If it is useful, go ahead, do it, right? But personally, I guess internally, I kind of am processing this as I'm talking it with you right now. I will admit that. The religion is not. So, what was the distinction that I just made between useful and real, right? I don't think religion is real, but it is useful, right? So that's basically my argument here. I don't exactly deny. I don't think I deny what you are saying. I
Right.
just agree with a part of it and disagree with another part of it. Please tell me if I'm
Yeah, no,
understanding you.
I think that's good. I think like I don't want to play devil's advocate for Peterson completely. I think I guess the one thing I will say is like the only thing that I guess maybe I don't know if we need to talk about it, but like the Peterson argument would then be, well, what is the most real if not the evolutionary? Because that is how,
I
like,
agree.
you know,
So, for example, if you have a religion, I'm going to sound, I am not attacking any religion in particular, although this is a fear that some people have over a particular religion. I'm not going to state exactly what, but if there was a religion, in fact, I think a lot of religions have done this if you look at it from an historical point of view. But if there is a religion that acknowledges, for example, killing people, right?
yeah,
You talk about the evolutionary truth. Well, is it evolutionarily useful for your livelihood to give yourself permission to take someone else's life based on this religious excuse? Just check that. Go do it and see what happens. 100, 200, 300 years ago, you probably could get away with it. But now that we are in a more evolved society that actually allows for billions of people to coexist, which is a huge number compared to how it was previously. This society that allows for such a greater magnitude of people
mm-hmm.
was founded on the rule that you couldn't do that. So it's still, I agree with you in the sense that if there's always an evolutionary truth
Mm-hmm.
that if so maybe I'm not sorry, I'm kind of like missing my words here. It's the language gap. It's you could still see it from the point of view of an evolutionary truth,
Can
right? It's
still
still
rank order them.
science is a great tool, in my opinion, for evolutionary truths. I think science, and I think I could explain this a little bit further because I haven't been clear as much on that, but I think science is the natural way of measuring evolutionary truths, right? Because if it works, if you can consistently develop a model based on experiment and observation that works over time and for different people, right? The different people part, I'm not as much concerned. It's just as I'm more concerned with the working for yourself kind of part,
Mm-hmm.
right? If it works for you over time to believe that there are other people and they're conscious, and you live in a society and you can't murder someone else indiscriminately or because you were angry at them, and you follow all these rules and they work for you, right? That's kind of a scientific argument because you're basing yourself on proof, right? You're basing yourself on proof. It's kind of a scientific method. Scientific method, you can aside the hell out of what I'm saying here. I'm being a bit vague about the scientific method, but I think it's based on this fundamental principle of observation and testing and deriving conclusions based on that testing. That's what I mean by scientific method here. And you are doing that when you live as a society and you find out that if you hurt someone else, it'll end up badly for you. That's why you don't do it. It's a good representation that exists in your conscious mind. Now, it still doesn't say anything about objective reality or what is real, right? But it's useful. And so it is an evolutionary truth. So I guess I am agreeing with you. I just might have not explained myself properly and wasn't processed enough on it to get to the point here. But I guess I am agreeing with you, yes, on the evolutionary truths kind of part. Maybe you'd advocate more for the religious side of things. I would be more skeptical of things. I think that's kind of maybe.
I'm not. So I'm not. I mean, this was. I was
If you're comfortable talking about this, please.
yeah.
If you're not, don't.
No. I was like, I'm just laughing because the segue I was going to do originally was like the religion that I have is Vinland Saga right now. that is as close to religion as I have.
That's
There's
a
like
great
no,
religion.
yeah. So
We're gonna build that church right here, right now. Let's go. Let's do.
So it's when it comes to other religions, I am very much like it's a distant problem for me because it's like in my lived reality, there like I only have like exposure to like Christianity. I know some Muslims, definitely people who are agnostic or non-believing, and then that's about it. I mean, that's actually probably about it.
I take myself as agnostic, just to add to that. I think that's what fits the concept that fits better with my views here.
Yeah. So for me, practically, it's like I don't even think I've had the necessity. So to go back to this whole usefulness thing, I've just not had the necessity to think about this problem, to be honest, because it's like I think most of reality. Before I transition to Vinland Saga, I think most of the Western world, and I think Peterson's like deeply true about this, is like most of the Western world, even if we don't have the same semantic representations, we still have the same behavioral and like value driven representations of like we have a shared religion,
I
and
see
that
what you
like
mean.
it's like we live the same story out, or we respect the same types of stories.
Yes, yes.
And so I'm like, yeah,
I think OP functions might be a bit into that. For example, if you think about social functions, and you think about people who value networking and relationships more than just being
right,
self motivated, right? That's a narrative that you can see cross culturally,
right,
right? I think OP can clarify a bit into what you're saying. That I'm not saying it's the total answer. I'm just saying it could
right.
be a good step to a good tool to examine that, a good representation for that, right?
Mhm.
um I thought of something and I forgot it. I was gonna say something. Sorry, blanked out. I blanked out a lot. Yeah, I'm kind of, yeah, we can talk a bit about Vinland then, I guess.
Yeah, I think like just to set it up, I think with Vinland, it has like it has synthesized all of the intellectual stuff that I've gathered over the years and questioned over the years into like a singular narrative and philosophy that is very practical. Like I know, like I know it sounded like a joke. I think I actually mean it though. I
No, no, no,
really
no, no.
think,
That's totally
yeah,
fine. I'll give you my point of view on what on when you said that you believed in Vinland. I was like, that's great, because I see religion as just belief on a certain narrative, right? That's kind of, and if it is useful in your own life, and you're
mm,
not hurting other people, and you're not hurting yourself, you can believe in the fucking ponies. I don't care as long as it's useful. I'm not making fun. I some people would think, oh, it's an anime, you shouldn't believe it. I don't believe that. I'll fucking love anime. And again, it's about the story. Religion is still a story too, right? Christianity, sorry, but to me, Christianity is still a story. Okay, it's not an anime, but there is a common factor between Vinland, which is an anime, it's a story about characters, and the story of Christianity or other religions. Those are still stories. And we're basing our what you're doing there is hitting it right on the mark of the part that is relevant about religion, which is, well, it's a story that has relevancy in our lives as long as we believe it and take it as for granted, right? We take it for granted it's useful in our lives. Taking care of the next person, loving the next one. You don't really need to read the whole Bible to get that NF meaning, that NF priority, right?
mm,
And what you're doing there when you say, in my opinion, what you're doing there when you say, I take Vinland as a religion, you are as valid as anyone who reads a bit of the Bible and goes to church and also extrapolates an NF out of it and takes that as a good priority or rule in their lives. It's the exact same thing. It's
mm.
the exact same thing. And it's not something to make fun of, because it is the essence of religion that's happening there. You're extrapolating these NF beliefs out of stories.
Mm.
That's the same. It's literally the same.
Yeah,
Oh, look at me, all intuitive, right? Oh, it's the same. Come in the lead STs.
yeah,
Good that you're not an ESTP, because I have some ESTP friends. Oh boy, I wouldn't have talked for so long if I was talking with them. They would just interrupt me to correct me.
yeah. I appreciate that that encouragement and kind of clarification there. I think that um yeah, I'm not going to sit here and justify it. I just think that that's just how
No,
I
no, no.
operate. I think that
I was
like,
validating you
how
basically. Yeah.
I so the core philosophy, and I know I've mentioned this in other videos, but the core philosophy that I've extracted from the first 2 seasons of Vinland Saga, at least, because I know there's more to the story, but the the core philosophy for me is, in order to move away from apathy, boredom, depression, guilt, regret, like negative current state, you need to work towards a better future somehow, right? Like for them, for the characters in Vinland Saga, it's like literally like a new country, right? Whether it's like, I'm getting into spoiler territory here, but whether it's like an actual like here on earth, like I'm going to use violence in order to make this paradise on earth, this utopia, or we're going to escape and kind of do kind of like this exodus to kind of a more peaceful society for outcasts.
Do a
It just
reset, right? A place
exactly
where you can reset
exactly
and build a new society from scratch, right?
exactly.
Yeah,
And
yeah, 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 yeah.
I personally, like, even because of my Christian upbringing, I do think that there are limits and flaws to that, because there's always going to be like nothing's perfect, right? There's always going to be people that are going to try and like conflict with your plan. And like even in season 2, what happens when two ideas of utopia conflict? What do you do?
Right, right,
Right? And so I think that, but still, I think that it's still a it's still a worthwhile way to avoid depression, to avoid feelings of suicide, to avoid like empty malaise and things like that. And I think the second part of that philosophy is, and this is why one of the characters, Canute, was wrong in my opinion, is that yes, you work towards paradise in order to move away from like negative things, but the way in which you go about that matters,
right.
right? Like the ends don't justify the
By
means,
the
right? I think
means,
exactly. I think it's like your character, the type of person, the type of ethical actions. I mean, this is ethics basically. The type of actions that you do, they must basically be such that you would be okay with them being done to you, like the whole golden rule thing.
right? Yeah,
And so I think that that is my core philosophy right now that I've extracted from it. I used to be like I'm starting. So I used to take it so like SI seriously that it's like I would just pour it into Chat GPT and be like, "Hey, I want to follow this exact." Like I would like spell it out exactly how I would say it to you. It's like help me do this in like a step by step activity.
right,
Now I'm at a point where, because of Peterson, actually, I think I'm starting to simplify my approach. So instead of doing like all these different random routines, there's kind of a heuristic that I have of what, like, there's self negotiation, because like I don't think I can force myself to do stuff. That's just me. I like, if I don't want to do it, like, I don't care how beautiful the goal is. I'm not fucking waking up at 4 a.m. to be a philanthropist.
right, right. We all identify with that.
So the self negotiation is, what am I willing to do right now? So this whole eternal present, what am I willing to do at this moment in order to make things in life a little better? That's kind of my heuristic, because I think that covers pretty much everything, right? That could be you reaching out to someone saying, "Hey, I hope you're doing well." That could be you trying to, like, improve a social situation. That could be you trying to improve things at work, in your physical environment, your bedroom, the whole clean your room thing. It could be literally anything, as long as it fits that like basic heuristic.
So I'll give you my view on that, and I'm gonna be boring about
Okay.
it. Okay, at least on that end conclusion that you gave, which is, I think it still goes back to evolutionary truth.
Okay.
You're acting, and you're seeing if your actions provide a positive outcome, a positive result. You get positive value out of it,
Mhm.
and then it's exactly like in machine learning, man. You're doing, okay, I'm not going to use the term, but you're training the system to do more of those things that give positive value, and therefore doing less of those things that give negative value. And that's still, to me, I see that as still like a scientific method based approach, where you're acting, taking measurements out of reality, seeing if those measurements provide you with positive feedback. The positive feedback doesn't exactly fit the scientific method, but it's the rest of it entirely fits. You're seeing if it gives you a positive feedback, and you're reinforcing the behaviors that give you positive feedback. And then
Right.
again, if you say, "Oh, I got it from Vinland," great. Who
Yeah.
cares? It's working. It's useful, and it's
Yeah.
an evolutionary truth, or it's evolutionary truthful. Truthful.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So
No, and I find that great. I find that great what you're saying. It's a great principle by which to guide yourself in life. The DNI approach of what you're saying, it's really interesting. You go to ChatGPT and ask for SI instructions. DNI approach, I think, would be more like, you just understand it, and as you go through the chaos, you just project your NI onto it as you're going through the chaos. But it's
I can't
still,
do that shit.
as long as,
That's so hard.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no, yeah, 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 right. But yeah, I really enjoy that you got out. Interesting thing. I never. So I already thought of what Thorfinn did in the exact same way as you explained it to
Mhm.
find Vinland, right? But I didn't think of Canute and what Canute was doing in that manner. I
Mhm.
thought, okay, so for the people that haven't watched Vinland,
Yeah, this is
spoiler, I can't not say
yeah,
this.
yeah,
Sorry, I
yeah,
cannot say this. We have to get into the SD of it. I thought that Canute was just uh, what's the word? Fighting God. You know, my interpretation wasn't Canute
yeah.
wasn't try was Canute is trying to build a utopia, but I didn't think that was the goal of it. I think that was the means. The utopia was the means, and the
So he
end
was
goal was he
interesting.
was he was trying to say he was trying to prove something to God, which is like I can do this without you.
Yeah.
I That's what I got from Canute. You know, I think that that was his long term goal, and the utopia was just a means to it. So
Mhm.
I don't remember. Again, I watched this some months ago. I don't exactly remember.
That's interesting. I think that anger towards God for kind of abandoning and kind of like screwing over humanity, basically. I think that it's interesting. That might have been the primary motive. I think that maybe because I was filtering it through my lens, like I kind of filtered that out because I was like, who cares if he's angry at God? It's like he's trying to build this utopia, just like
Builds
Thorfinn.
utopia, right?
So it's like that was the priority for me. But
Oh, I
yeah,
see what you mean. Look, I'll be honest with you. Like, I don't really care if it's ST accurate. If it's a good principle to guide your life with, you're good, man. As far as I'm concerned, you know, tell me what functions I have.
yeah.
But yeah, yeah, whatever. It's still you're building an utopia. There's okay. I guess Thorfinn's motivation is more direct to the utopia. Canute is not as much, but it's still what you just said exactly applies still because they're still both trying to build a utopia. One is conquering the realm in which he is in, and the
Mhm.
other is going more for the escapist route because the other doesn't believe in harming other people and trying to do it with the least. Because again, we're talking about an individual that actually harmed a lot of people, right? And he realized that all that harm. Oh my God. Okay, let's talk a bit about Vinland. Like he just realized that all the harm that he did, because all the harm that he did was literally to serve a goal. The goal was vengeance, or was rooted in vengeance,
Yeah.
right? And that was season one, basically, right? And then he like the it's like you grab a bar of soap and it slips out of your hand when you were trying to grasp it, you know, like he almost got to having his vengeance, right? Or at least he was in his path to get that vengeance, right?
Mhm.
And then it was removed right out of his hands. And not only that, the person that he was uh, sort of projecting all this vengeance towards was not that bad of a person as he originally thought he was. And
Mhm.
so those two things combined broke him completely. And I find that so interesting, this flip, right? Because the show sells you off as just another action, cool character kills everyone kind of show, you know, cool character defeats the enemy. It sells you off, it baits you with that, right? Because that's what we're used to in these kinds of shows, you know.
Mhm.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that's not the direction that the story is intended to. That's just bait for you to finish season one. That doesn't happen, right? The character doesn't get his vengeance, and it becomes way more introspective over okay, what the fuck? It's like the character is going through therapy, right? He literally goes through therapy during the, let's say, the first half or the full season two. He's literally realizing, okay, he kind of deletes his original self. It's very, very interesting. It goes back, I think that relates back to the idea that the brain sort of needs to dissolve itself in order to build itself back up, right? I think Thorfinn experienced something very much like that. He was completely broken. He kind of almost forgot himself in a way, right? He doesn't don't didn't you feel that? He kind of forgot who he was during season
Yeah,
two.
I honestly thought like hopefully this isn't a like derailment, but I honestly thought watching season two, I thought they were gonna go down this route of like he was so traumatized that he literally forgot, and then he was gonna remember himself. That's what I thought was gonna happen. But
Right.
then it's like, but then they revealed over time, like no, he
He
remembers.
remembers everything, right?
Yeah,
Oh, Sorry, it's not. I don't remember. I remember it very vaguely, but now that you say it, yes, because he didn't explicitly. Yes, they do sell it as he forgot it, but then he eventually just shows, okay, no, I've always when he talks with his friend, I don't remember the name of the friend, but he has conversations with his friend, and he explains it. No, I was this person, you know. So he's kind of coming to terms with that. Okay, this motivation that I had during all these years, right? And all this hurt that I brought onto people. Again, back to evolutionary truth, I guess. Doesn't work for me. Didn't work for me. Didn't bring me positive value. And so I've got to reframe my whole understanding, right, in order to find other ways to inform my actions that will benefit me better. And what he's concluded, in part because he feels adept towards the people that he has hurt, right?
Right.
He feels kind of adept. That's why he's so extreme about escapism. I think that's part of the reason, right? The not escapism. Yes, escapism by proxy, but pacifism, exactly.
Yeah.
He's very much a pacifist and does not allow himself to kill anyone else again. And I find that so fascinating. And I just love, in terms of analyzing the narrative of the story, right? I just love how this was all given to you on episode 1. It was like the episode 1, here's the principle by which the whole show is going to be guided, and you're not going to get it. You know, you're going to see Thorfinn kill and murder people throughout the show. You're going to forget that was the principle as much as Thorfinn did. The show kind of plays games with you, right? Because you go through a very similar experience as Thorfinn. Thorfinn actually goes through the hurt and kills and murders people and forgets what his father Thorf said to him, which is to no one deserves to suffer. You know, I have no enemies, right? And he forgets that due to his vengeance. We as a viewer forget that because we're just so clung up on the action, but we both forget it. You know, it's kind of an interesting play that the creators of the show did it, because you don't think of that teaching as the season 1 is going on. But then when season 1 ends, you experience kind of the same thing that Thorfinn experienced, which is, fuck, okay, the goal of the character, this action-packed character, he's now actually, his villain wasn't as much of a villain. You know, you, the viewer, are as confused as Thorfinn is. And I find that just so amazing. It's such good storytelling, you know. At least that's how I went through it, you know. And yeah, season two gives you the therapy and sort of rehab that Thorfinn also had. You also kind of process, okay, yeah, what Thorfinn was doing actually could have thought better. I guess we as a viewer are just hoping for an action show because we don't have that in real life and we just want to be entertained, right? Thorfinn is much more of a real experience. He's much more into it, right? But there's still a lot of parallels in the viewer and Thorfinn, I think, at least in season 1.
Yeah, I think so. I think, you know, not to get too much into OP talk, I think that the author, I watched an interview with the author. I think the author has NI, in my opinion. Like he had this goal of what he wanted to communicate with the show, and then
I think the show is very NI. I thought of that previously because it just reveals you can't make season 1 without already having thought of season 2. You can't. That you have to see the full narrative, the full end goal, for you to put the bait that season 1 gives you, and then do the season 2 therapy session.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I thought of that too. Yes.
So there was that, and then I think also, you know, like probably not Sleep Last, right? So I think it's a very processed as well. So, but anyway, you know, I don't want to get too much into OP talk there. I think that, yeah, I think it, as you mentioned, it's a very intentional journey that you're brought along because I think it's because the author is so insistent on, he's like, I really want this message to come across.
To come across, exactly. That's why I also think it's so NI. He had a plan. He had a goal. This is what this is what people need to understand, you know. And I'm going to guide you through all this story of hate and violence and anger and all of this, to then give you the break that will put you in a off-guard position that will then allow you to rebuild your own thinking. I agree with you completely. And I think it's kind of an INFJ Jesus-like message that Vinland is kind of like giving. I also thought of that. Yes.
Yeah, I think, I mean, in addition, I mean, it's like Thorfinn himself is like inspired by like the Bible. He's not necessarily, I don't know if he's a Christian ever. Because I know the manga's still going on, but like yeah, it's like there's scenes where it's like he's listening in on like I forgot Snake in season 2,
Right.
the retainer reading to the old
The
master.
Bible. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right, right, right.
And
Yeah, you read
Thorfinn
the
was
Bible like every day or something, right?
yeah, and
Yeah.
Thorfinn was very fascinated by that message. So I think it's definitely very similarly on similar tracks for sure. I just find like this is me, and I understand that this could be Xena's sacrilegious. Like I find Villain Saga eminently more like impactful than I've been a Christian or used to be a Christian my whole life, right? It's like I've read the Bible and like eminently more impactful than anything I've read in the Bible ever. Like,
Right, right.
and I was like, and I
Can I ask? Uh, it's fine if
yeah,
you don't feel like answering. Can I ask why do you think that is?
I'm fine with answering. I think that there's a couple problems. I think the Bible is removed from our context, right? Like Vinland Saga is set in a mostly Western. It's in the past, but it's like it's set in things I know and
And it
understand.
was created recently, so whatever information that Vinland was providing was filtered through the lens of a person that lives in the common day-to-day life. So even if it is a medieval story,
Yeah,
it's not going to be given to you with medieval information. It's going to be giving you it's going to be filtered and provided in a more current
yeah.
day shape. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was trying to
No,
compliment.
exactly. So I think that's the first problem is that the Bible is like especially with like all the different translations and all these disagreements. It's like
Right, right,
there's a I do think it's a layer removed from me. I think as well though, the issue with the Bible is like I'm gonna be honest. It's like I think that it's not an issue with the Bible so much because I think this also happens in anime. Is like most people watch it or read the Bible or whatever, and they spin out on stupid shit. That's my opinion. And it's like,
right.
and the conversation then becomes, oh, like what happened to his blade, or oh, what happened
The
to,
cool
like
thing.
yeah, Einar or whatever. And I'm like,
The cool sword.
yeah, and I'm like, yeah, exactly. It's like,
But
yeah,
I want the cool sword.
yeah, his sword was so awesome. I'm like, okay, yes, it was, but it's like you're
Yeah,
missing
but that's not the NI message.
exactly.
So I'm gonna tell you something again. This is me emphasizing my views on religion and God more. A disclaimer. I mean absolutely no disrespect towards me. This is my view. I could be wrong. Okay, maybe tomorrow I'll wake up and realize I was completely wrong. But my current view is that you're pointing out the reason why I asked this because I was testing. Okay, does this fit with our conversation? And it did because what happened is that the Bible and Vinland are both stories, and the Bible failed you as a story, right? Or at least not failed you. That's a harsh word, but it wasn't good enough as a story for you to extract meaning out of it that would guide you in your life.
Mhm.
Religion. So believing in religion for the sake of being a religion, I am 100% against that. Okay, personally. So it should give you, if it's going to give you an F meaning, at least let it be ST useful. And the individual has to recognize it in the meaning. The people that believed in Jesus and wrote the Bible, so the first ones, live with Jesus, right? Actually live with him. They actually saw what he was teaching and were guided by him directly. So that's they were actually ST. There was actually a direct ST proof of his teachings by watching him. Nowadays, we're guided by the stories that are made, which are could be completely inaccurate, right? But even if we take it at the DNF part of it is not updated to our modern society, and that's why it's more difficult to resonate with it, and that's why it's more of a chore in my head, at least, to believe in a religion like that, because you're just believing for the sake of believing. There's not much. There is some things, but most of it doesn't even make sense in nowadays terms. There's some things in the Bible like for example, views on homosexuality, that just doesn't apply to the current present day, right? So you cannot. The world is a constant process of. So I think of dualism as fundamental, right? It's a constant process of yin and yang. We grow, something grows, then it must be killed so that new can be reborn out of the death, right? And then we grow, die, grow, die. Christianity, I think, has grown enough, and that's why people are not following it as much as they did before, right? in my opinion, at least in relative terms in society. I know in the US it's much more present. I don't think personally, from my personal experience, a lot of people that I know are really into it. They might have their family members that are that follow its rituals, but again, it's just a ritualistic thing. It's not a actual NF thing that I use to guide myself in my life. And so, in terms of religious, Nietzsche talks about this, the death of God, right?
Yeah.
I got that from watching Jordan Peterson. Um, and I think that what you're doing here is just giving an example of, okay, we need new stories, because that's what the Bible is. It's just a story. But we need a new story that fits in to what we have nowadays. And that's why I think it hits you so hard. It hits you so hard because it's current. The other one has. I'm sounding. I don't mean this as aggressively as I'm making it sound. But the old religion has to die, and new religions or new NFs need to be born out of new stories, right? That's just the continuous process of rebirth, and that it must happen because things change. The time does this, right? Things change to a level that it doesn't matter how much Jesus can NFNT the shit out of it, He cannot make an NI belief. He could not manufacture with his brain an NI belief that would project for the rest of eternity. His NI belief only can see so much thousands of years into the future. And after those two, maybe, let's say, in practical terms, 2,000 years into the future, right? It will stop. It will stop holding up, especially as society changes. And I can only come out of SE experience. He did not live in today's society. And he did not live in today's society. The prophets of all these religions, not just Christianity, but all the different variants of Christianity. I'm not really into that. I'm probably being extremely inaccurate here, but these prophets, right, that we take so seriously, existed in a context that just wasn't ours. How could their beliefs, like, we're putting a lot of pressure on things that should be forgotten already, like these beliefs are outdated. and so when you say, okay, but I find more NF meaning in an anime, right? It sounds so ridiculous at first hand, but I think that's just being superficial. It's still a story, exactly as these stories are. These stories that we base our religions on are. It's all still stories, and we extract meaning out of it that we use to guide our actions, that give us positive feedback. Again, it's an evolutionary truth. Sorry, I over prolonged my explanation. You're very patient with me. Thank you for listening to my TED Talk.
That's fine. No, I appreciate it as well. Yeah, I don't know if I have much more to say. I think I think that covered it. Like,
Yeah.
well, I guess there's one thing. I think that, like, this notion of, I'm just curious about this, actually, in the sense of, like, your approach to NFs needing to be updated and with the society, right? Like, the society updates, and so the stories need to update with it, something like that. Do you think that, like, I guess when it comes to society's updating, I guess my question is, like, okay, what if it updates in, like, the wrong direction? And, like, the older stories had a better direct, like, you just don't even think that way?
Science, brother. Science with measurement. This sounds, it sounds like I'm throwing concepts here. Why do I say science? I mean science because if we can find a method in which we can apply beliefs and the beliefs work, and we apply that method as much as we possibly can, right? Then we'll know if it's giving, if we're going in the right direction or not. You say, what you're saying is you're kind of challenging this notion of, okay, I talked about positive feedback, but is it really positive feedback? Because human beings have this very tough battle with themselves, especially nowadays with computers and phones and social media and all of that, where they battle their short-term pleasure against their long-term pleasure, right? Mm-hmm. I personally am still battling with that because I also have an addiction towards computers and phones and all that stuff. I'm not an exception to that. And fast food and all these things that are short-term pleasure but long-term detriment, right? It's David Chen talked about the pain equation, which again is just an idea that's been talked about way before them, right? The pain equation, where pain is going to appear. Where do you want it to be localized in time? Do you want to throw it to the future, or do you want to bring it to the now as much as possible? It's still going to be there, right? personally, like I'm still uh, sort of trying to live my life and making steps towards pulling the pain towards the present, even though I have been more of a short-term pleasure kind of individual, unfortunately, on my life up until now. But that's a me thing. Sorry, I didn't mean to talk about myself. That's just me giving my own self view. But I think that what you say there is very interesting, because when we say that something gives us positive feedback, we also need to be at a higher level to measure or find methods to measure if that positive feedback is just short term or long term, right?
Right.
And we can't just say, okay, I'm having pain right now, therefore it's going to be good in the future, because I could cut my arm off right now, it would be painful right now, and it also wouldn't be good in the future. So that basis of like, okay, just because it's hurting right now, it's good for you, not a good basis. It needs to, well, I guess the measurement process needs time, because you need to be able to implement something, wait, and then be able to measure if the outcome days, weeks, months, years after was positive. I think that's the only kind of real method that you can do, and that's why science takes time. Science takes time, because that's the only way that you can measure. That's why you have these big studies that, for example, reveal the effects of long exposure to screens. And you can really only draw real conclusive evidence after some time has passed, because you need time. You can only build a model that says things are going to give you a positive outcome 5 years from now if you've experienced that thing giving you positive outcomes 5 years after you did it. you you know
Right.
and that's a problem that we can't speed up. That's just the way things are. And in a lot of ways, society is still coming to terms with that. There are a lot of things that society is still updating as we grow and develop together, right? And cultures are merging with each other, but then there's conflict and all the confusion that we have nowadays, right? You could explain that partly as we're still figuring out our evolutionary truths, because we still haven't seen what, for example, Europe accepting immigrants, refugees, right, is going to do to us 10 years from now. We don't know the long-term effects of using a phone, because phones have only existed for less than 20 years. How can we know the effects that's going to happen to us in 50? We can project it, right? But then again, that's not evidence. That is just a projection. You can make the same argument about climate change. Again, I'm not denying any of these things. I am of the argument that if you see a trend and the trend is going in one way, you don't know what's going to happen next, but you need to look at the trend, right? But what I'm saying is conclusiveness can only come once the thing plays itself out. That's when you get 100% absolute conclusiveness, which is unreasonable in a lot of situations. You can't realistically implement that. That's fine. Time's a bitch, right? Sorry, I don't know if you can curse here. Sorry, bro. I should have asked for that. But that's something that we work on still, as a society, as humans, as individuals. Uh, yeah, I guess for me that's mostly it. I don't know if you want to talk about something else. I know you're kind of tired, so maybe
Yeah. And sorry for the siren in the background. It's
that's
like,
okay. That's okay.
okay. So I think this is probably a good natural stopping point. Um, this is really great. I think that, like, just I just took notes on, like, we covered quite a lot, but I think the core motifs is this fitness versus truth. I think that was the theme of this, honestly.
I think yes, evolutionary truths. It's still kind of the same thing. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. So I think this is a good stopping point. Um, and yeah, so I think I want to kind of cap it here. I'll talk to you a little bit after the recording, but I wanted to thank everyone for kind of joining and indulging us for a little bit more of this. But
Yeah, I want to thank the viewers of this video for indulging on my TED Talk here.
yeah,
And thank you, Reggie, for allowing me to come here and talk. These are things that I think about a lot. It's not a lot. Like, again, I'm just giving you my views in these couple of videos. I think I've covered a lot of what is my sort of personal beliefs. But it's been really great to just talk about them here. Just have someone to listen to me. In my personal life, I don't get a lot of people that are as patient as you are being with me, for example, right? Because I like talking, about this kind of stuff. But
yeah,
it's been a really great conversation, and your input has also, like, Even I admitted it during this conversation. Like I was kind of like processing stuff as I was talking, because of stuff that you were mentioning. It was really good. I'm really glad this happened. Yeah, man, thank you.
Yeah, no, and thanks for being here. I think I'll close it on this. I think like conversations like these are lacking, I think. And so both in my personal life, but I think also I think people want to hear these types of conversations. It's just that they might not know how to like broach the topic or whatever.
Right,
So yeah.
right. Yeah, it's out there. They can watch it if they post a comment below and tell us
Yeah,
what
yeah,
you
yeah.
think.
Leave a like. Yeah, whatever.
Because these are the kind of deep talks, right? This is stuff that people we're still. I think as a society, we're still sorting this stuff out. You know, like I have my views. I believe I'm right in my views, right? If you actually ask Tiago, do you believe you're right? Yes, that's why I believe in them. I believe I'm right, but maybe I'm wrong. You know, who knows? Yeah, it's interesting to also get feedback from your from these conversations.
Nice. All right, cool. Well, yeah. So thank you so much. Thank you everyone for watching. And we'll see you in the next one. Take care. All right, I'm ending the recording here.